Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over a midweek video looking at some different case studies and how they have evolved since Monday. So first I'm going to go over SPY. On SPY we were looking at on Monday this wick that broke through this previous high, but we did not actually close through it. Now remember in the last video we were talking about this volume was above this line, showing that buyers were definitely in control and there was conviction by the buyers. Next day we have our gap up. We retest and break down through this previous level of resistance, which was acting as support. But you can see that earnings definitely are in play right now, and it really didn't matter because all of this volume and then all of this volume kind of aggregating at this area showed that there was definitely demand at this area. If there was no demand at this area, we wouldn't see a big bulge of volume forming here. So for all those sellers that came in trying to sell this breakdown, there was somebody buying it up, and then we have this big gap up today. And what's really interesting is you can see that during the second half of the day, there was a lot of volume creating new highs on SPY. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see that there is a gap above, and that is right around 298 to 300. So it will be interesting to see if this does fill into the rest of the week. The weekly candle is looking quite strong, and it's looking almost identical to this chart that we went over last weekend. Remember we were talking about this looks very similar to this? Well, we almost have the same exact candle that we did back in 2018, early 2019 during the 2018 move down. And it's just very interesting to see how history can repeat. I mean, you really can't make this up. This was your fifth candle. Both of these were literally a hollow red candle. And then you've got your absolute rip to the upside, continuing this V. Going to the Qs, something very interesting is happening over here as well. One, if we go to the daily chart, you'll see that on the hollow candle versus the raindrop here, we can see that today we broke out through this kind of ascending triangle, and you can see that there was volume confirming this breakout. Notice that we've got a big chunk of volume above here. We had the same thing that we saw in SPY. So notice here, we can see at this point though, buyers were in control in regards to the close as well, but we can see that volume was confirming that close above the trend line. So we have a gap above. We have earnings after hours that really move the market as well. So we'll just have to see if this gap closes, but there's a lot of momentum in the market right now. You really can't deny that. And this big bulge of volume here kind of confirms that on the daily candle. So what I want to go over next is a couple different things, charts that we've been reviewing over the last couple weeks. Roku is one of them. Remember Roku back in the day before we broke out, we had that big gap above. We then gapped up into the volume. And now remember what's happened has been before we did not have this much volume holding here. This is a function of the price kind of getting stuck here because this was an initial supply zone. But as this continues to be an area of resistance, you can see the volume is really starting to pick up here. This kind of formation is kind of reminding me of like your Amazons and your Nvidias a couple weeks ago. So is this going to be the next one that tries to break out to retest new highs? I mean, all the other ones have already done it, and this almost seems to be a laggard at this point. And so laggard versus leader has been a big theme in these videos. And so what I want to go over is a couple trades over the last week that I've done, Disney in particular. So this is a cool example of, remember we were talking about Disney being a laggard because it had not broken above the resistance or it wasn't resistance, it was the anchored VWAP that was a potential area of resistance. It had been resistance before, but you can see what happened. We are breaking through this area. This was 100% a laggard. We've got this huge demand zone that was forming, so we can see that it was hard for the price to drop anymore because there was no, there was nobody holding a profit. So when when you aren't holding any profit and you're just break even or at a loss, it's hard to sell. There's not really a point. So that causes supply and demand shifts in the curve that we talked about earlier in the week. Make sure to check out that video if you want to learn a little more about what's causing and driving these supply and demand shifts and the curves and why that's moving price. But for now, we can see that this demand zone did create enough of a base for the price to bounce off. If we go to GE, this is one that I'm currently watching as a laggard, simply because of the Alphatrends anchored VWAP here. And if we anchor it from this same point, this February high, notice what's happening in GE. We've got this massive demand zone that is forming here. And the biggest thing about this whole thing is the fact that you've got Delta ripping. You've got United Airlines ripping. If we go to United Airlines, this is like deja vu of United Airlines a couple days ago. I posted a chart about this, and you can see what happened, right? We had the anchored volume by price and the anchored VWAP from this point. You have all of this volume holding right here, and then you've got your move up to the anchored VWAP. So look at this chart. So compare this chart and all of this volume holding here, and then compare GE. I mean, it's almost crazy how identical these two are, except GE has not made the move yet. It's still right at that demand zone. And so, naturally, is this going to move up right to that 750, 760 area, which is the initial anchored VWAP from this gap down? But, this anchored VWAP from the February 12th high, that's way up here at 815. I mean, some people say that GE is not a big mover and can be slow, but that's the case. That's the case some of the time, but a lot of the time you can have these big impulse moves like this, where you're going to get literally you can get 30 to 40% in a few days, and this is just the market kind of in imbalance and rebalancing and inefficiencies becoming efficient, and this is definitely one of those laggard plays that is very interesting into the rest of the week. And remember, if we go to Delta or United Airlines, if we look at that chart, it's literally deja vu of what we're seeing in GE right now, except this is already happening. So same thing, anchoring it from this point. If we anchor the Alphatrends anchored VWAP, notice that we're right to this point. So is GE going to do that? Who knows? But I do like to look at patterns that are repeating in the market. And this overall pattern of anchoring the volume by price and anchoring the Alphatrends anchored VWAP here really gives you a better idea of what's going on in the market. I mean, most shares we're holding here. This created a base. Only so many people can sell, and you've got your absolute liftoff here. Huge gap above. The market is all about rotation and money going into different sectors. So naturally, the S&P 500 and some of these other sectors or indices, Dow Jones, you can continue higher because these have not even moved. Your GEs, your Deltas have really not even broke any type of area that's been important. Until we break like 35 on Delta, this thing is still technically in kind of like just dead zone. So this is just how oversold some of these are. And so, you really want to look at those laggards. The way that I'm finding laggards right now is looking at the anchored VWAP, which stocks have not moved above it yet. So as I mentioned, Delta's just getting there. We saw Disney finally breaking through that area today, showing that it's helping lead the market higher. So, this is what I would kind of expect just based on if a pattern was continuing. And please keep in mind, this video is to highlight TrendSpider and the different features on TrendSpider, not to tell you guys what's a good buy, what's a good sell. But at the same time, if we're going to be trying to have you guys check out a product and see if it's useful for you, there's got to be case studies that you can see that are actually working or not working. And so there's plenty of examples of this same setup across the board over the last few weeks. Make sure to check out our videos and see some of those examples in real time. And the cool thing to do is look at some of these charts from the videos a couple weeks ago, and then on TrendSpider, create them yourself, and you can replicate them and see how they've done since then. This is just one of the examples. Another example is CGC and the whole marijuana sector and industry. CGC is one of those that has not broken through that anchored VWAP as well yet. Notice that this was a fun one. This was another laggard play where Tilray was breaking through this anchored VWAP from February, but CGC had not on Friday. So the natural thing was, well, CGC hasn't broken through this anchored VWAP yet. Could it be the next one? What happens? Next day, this thing absolutely rips right up to that anchored VWAP from the January 16th high, gets rejected, and now you've got this weird inside day going on. So it will be interesting to see what happens here. If you look at another example like CRON, you've got a very similar setup here, except you've got a lot of volume holding right where we are, right? We've got a ton of volume pretty much creating a base here. If we anchor the volume by price from this January 21st high, notice that the price was able to bounce pretty much right off this, the price was able to bounce right off this, excuse me, sorry. I need to clean up the chart. All right, it's bouncing right off this demand zone, right? These are where people are holding at break even. So naturally, as the price gets here, it's hard for the price to bounce down through it. So, will this be the next laggard that takes off? You've got a huge volume gap above. You've got this huge supply zone above. And remember, this supply zone, this big chunk of volume, represents all of the people who bought in on this dip early and are breaking even once we get back to 730. After you've dealt with a big drawdown, what's the first thing that you think of? All right, I'm getting out of this thing. You're not the only one. A lot of people think like that. As the price moves up, you got an increase in supply, not only from people breaking even, but also from people who bought at 630 and who want to take 20% profit, on their move to the 720s to possibly 750s above, where this big block of volume is. So, this is one way and not the only way to use TrendSpider, but from a pure technical analysis standpoint, using the anchored VWAP, using the anchored volume by price, and being able to see the volume flow with these raindrops really gives you an edge in the market. So as I mentioned, the Qs are showing quite a bit of volume above this previous resistance area, and we will see what happens from here. But we'll continue to do these videos. We do have a podcast on Sunday, so make sure to check it out. We'll have updates on all these charts, and we'll kind of see what happens from there. Last one I want to mention here is IWM. Over the weekend, we mentioned IWM was a laggard, and naturally, it has caught up quite quickly because risk is definitely back on in the market. We've got this gap above here that we were mentioning before. And, if you turn on the gap snake here, it's very easy to see that. So you can see you've got a gap here. You also have a gap above here as well. So, that's something to definitely check out. The gap snake is something that really helps me not have to go and see, all right, where are these gaps? What gaps are still open? All of that different stuff. So this is definitely a very powerful tool as well. Hopefully this helped you guys not only get an update on what's going on in the markets, but also some of the different ways you can utilize TrendSpider. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. Make sure to subscribe to check in on these videos as we do them quite often, and we do our Sunday podcast, The Trading Pit. Also, make sure to comment below if you have any questions regarding being an affiliate or anything like that. Our customers like to share charts. We love to share our customers' charts to help them and help people understand how different people are using the platform. So if you want to share charts and help us spread the word, please feel free to reach out as well. Everyone have a great night, and we will do another video on Sunday with John, aka Bubblehead, who is our next guest, 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Make sure to check it out. Have a great night and happy trading.